The morning air outside the factory gates was raw and unsettling, the kind that bit through my old gray jacket and clung to me, as if to say that I didn't belong anywhere warm or inviting. Even the sun seemed reluctant to rise, its pink underbelly hidden by the haze over Seoul's eastern rim. The others shuffled out alongside me, faces sapped of light, their uniforms smeared with grease and fatigue. My feet ached, knees stinging from hours of stacking boxes. Around me, the chatter was low and coarse. An older man I barely knew gave me a sidelong glance as he lit his first cigarette of the day. "You still daydreaming about prancing in front of mirrors? Yeah?" he said, exhaling his smoke so it lingered around my face. A few others snickered. I hunched my shoulders, hands deep in my pockets. An older woman with hair faded by years and ammonia added, "Maybe you can glide over to a better job then, Min-jae. Don't forget to bow when you leap over us." The laughter was sharp and cackling, echoing around the cracked concrete. I didn't answer, just kept my eyes on the ground and cradled the fragile something that lived inside me. Fear, yes, but something else too. Defiance. The walk home was slow, barely audible over the early trucks and distant horns of the waking city. My steps were sore but rhythmic. Each hit of my heel against the pavement beat out a memory of the night before. The stolen hour in my cramped little room when I had stretched and moved, music whispering from my cell phone. I let my body tell me what it wanted. I let my limbs ache sweetly with possibility. When I got home, the door banged shut behind me like a final condemnation. Aunt Uni was already up, spoon clanging as she stirred her eternal pot of anchovy broth. She glanced at me, all disapproval and fatigue. My cousin Jiho gave a sullen nod before heading out, backpack slung over his shoulder. I moved quietly, sliding into my corner of the apartment, dropped my bag, and stretched out on the cold linoleum floor. "Don't waste time practicing that nonsense today," Aunt Uni called, not unkindly, but helplessly. "We need you to shop, and you promised to look for side jobs." I didn't answer. The kitchen clock ticked, as if mocking me for my silence. That day, I nodded, did the shopping, handed her the small change, swept the apartment, and folded the laundry. Each act was slow. My bones heavy, thinking of everything I was letting slip. Time, youth, the narrow chance that danced always at the edge of my imagination. That evening, once everyone was asleep and the snoring became the soundtrack of the apartment, I pulled the chair away from the table and pushed myself into the bit of space I had. I moved left, right, a pirouette from memory, an imagined ensemble behind me, just the scraping of feet and breath for percussion. I tried a leap, landing softly, but something in my heart cringed. What if I was wrong? What if they all were right? The rejection wasn't new. Since I was a boy, people thought it was cute the way I'd move with the songs on TV, the school talent shows. But then I turned 15, and the boys in my class got bigger, meaner. "Why not just be a man like everyone else?" my uncle said, after he found me rehearsing. My mother had died by then. My father had disappeared into debt and disappointment. Dancing was for girls or rich kids or weirdos, they all agreed. Even friends made their distance known. I learned a quieter way to breathe, to exist. Still, I kept moving because the alternative, sitting, stewing, letting my limbs harden, was worse. I found videos online, read about hip-hop and contemporary, and tried to decipher the foreign words for steps. I dreamed of the neon studios in Apgujeong. I could imagine the polished floors under my feet, the mirrors reflecting a self that was possible, not impossible. But each time I brought up the idea of taking lessons, the family shut me down. "We don't have money for hobbies. It's not a hobby." Try telling that to the landlord when the rent is late, Min-jae. On my 20th birthday, I worked a double shift at the factory. Jiho bought me cold noodles. Aunt Uni gave me an envelope with 10,000 won and her blessing to try, just one class, if it stops you from whining. Those few hours at Starbeat Studio felt like stepping onto another planet. Lights, music, limbs sweeping in unison, the sound of sneakers on wood. I blushed as I flailed, hopelessly out of sync, but the instructor, a wiry guy named Daewon, caught my eye and grinned. "Just move how you feel, little brother," he said. "Feet will learn. Heart teaches the rest." That night I returned home lighter, my shirt mottled with sweat and something like hope. Ji-ho laughed at the sight of me, but the mocking felt less cruel. For a week, I skipped eating out to afford more classes. When the money ran dry, I watched from the window, head against the glass. Months blurred, a year, maybe more, marked by the calluses on my feet, the small victories of mastering a step, catching rhythms, knowing when to lead and when to blend. I got better. But jobs at the factory swallowed most of my soul. I performed in open mics in back alleys, at festivals where no one cared. I sent videos to contests and got polite refusals. Sometimes I would pause in the middle of a move, breathless and shaking. "Why am I still doing this?" I'd whisper. But the answer was always in the music. One summer night after work, I got a message from Daewon. "Big audition downtown next week. Need an extra body for our team. Show up." I barely had enough energy to stand, but I showed up. The studio was packed, dancers in neon colors, shoes lined up by the wall. When our group's turn came, nerves chewed at my insides, but as the music played, I dissolved into movement. Every jeer from the factory, every jibe from home, every ache gone. I remembered only the rush. Days went by, then weeks. I heard nothing, assumed I'd failed. But then the call came. "You're in. First job pays barely anything. Doesn't matter. You're in." My first real performance wasn't a main stage, but a loud, rain-soaked street festival in Hongdae. We danced for an hour, dodging puddles and passers-by, the city blurring around us. When I finished, soaked to the skin, people clapped, strangers grinning, some films on their phones. I felt a popping in my chest, a wild, impossible lightness. When Ji-ho saw the video, he snorted. "Is this what you quit the factory for?" But his voice wasn't cruel, only curious. Aunt Uni shook her head but pressed a few bills into my palm. "Pay the water bill and find some real work." I did other gigs, small ones, teaching kids, dancing weddings, performing with whatever groups would take me. Money was scarce. Embarrassment bubbled up every time I came home late or couldn't help with rent. Rumors spread through the neighborhood. Some aunties whispered, "Poor Min-jae, grown man, still playing." There were harder times, a twisted ankle during rehearsal. Nights spent sleeping on ripped mats at the studio. Once, I nearly gave up. But Daewon pushed me. "We don't dance for approval. We dance because we cannot bear the silence." Then 3 years after I'd left the factory, opportunity stomped in with new shoes. It was an open call for choreographers at a rising entertainment company, Moonrise. They needed dancers, someone fresh who understood the pulse of the city, who knew pain and rhythm. It didn't pay at first. The studio in Gangnam was all glass and chrome and cold mornings. I learned to build routines, to command a room, to stay up all night, weaving stories with movement. Little by little, my routines started catching attention. Videos went viral, kids mimicking my steps, idols referencing my moves. My name appeared in tiny texts under other, more famous names. Then, one day, my phone blew up. A K-pop group, Ocelot, wanted a choreographer for their comeback. Me. They'd heard of the kid from the streets who could blend hip-hop with tradition, who gave ordinary movements new power. I spent nights piecing steps with nerves stretched raw, afraid my body would betray me, afraid of more rejection. Opening night in Yeouido was all neon and roar. I stood side stage, powder on my palms to hide my shaking. When Ocelot performed the dance I'd built from the cracked floors of my youth, the crowd roared, lights flashing so wild even the doubters might pause. When the group bowed and called out, choreography by Min-jae, something inside me unknotted, a hurt that had festered for years. I stood there, cheeks hot, tears threatened, but I held them back. In that crowd, my old instructor appeared, grinning. He clapped me so hard my arm tingled. You danced for yourself, now you dance for the whole world. The reel spun faster. I got offers, music labels, TV commercials, show auditions, and consultant gigs. I flew to Japan for workshops. Then America, my world once a 6-block radius of shame and exhaustion, expanded till each city became a possible stage. But success tasted strange, bittersweet. Sometimes, alone in hotel rooms with awards on the side table, I'd remember the dawn-gray factory lights and how small I'd once felt. And I missed Seoul's home's dull ache humming under my skin. Nearly 6 years had passed when the message came. Aunt Uni's birthday was coming up. Will you attend? Jiho wrote. She'd like to see you. Everyone asks about you these days. I booked my flight, shoulders heavy with anxiety. I rehearsed what I would say, how I might prove myself to those who never believed. I tried to picture my old apartment, the battered stove, the torn wallpaper, my corner of the floor. Arriving at Incheon, the city seemed both enormous and shrunken, a version of the place I'd left, and yet nothing like the world I carried now in my muscle and bone. My cab ran through rain-washed alleys, the windows beaded with memory. When I reached the apartment block, I hesitated, suitcase in hand, heart throttled by nerves. Inside, Aunt Uni was exactly as I remembered, face lined, hair thinner, voice flat with surprise. Jiho stood off to the side, taller now, face harder but eyes softer. There were cousins and aunties, neighbors, some of them from the old factory, packed around the small steaming kitchen. All eyes on me. I tried to smile, nerves hitching up my chin. Look who remembered us, the old woman from upstairs cackled, her hands bunched on her hips. Been too busy tap dancing for the rich folks, eh, Min-jae? The laughter fizzed and popped around the room, not vicious, but expectant. I swallowed. The celebration was awkward, full of small talk and side glances. I handed Aunt Uni a box. Inside, a silk scarf I brought back from Paris. I could see her hands trembling as she touched it. I hear you're making a lot now, said an uncle I barely knew. Maybe time to buy a real house, yes? I nodded politely. My mouth was dry. After dinner, Jiho nudged me. If you're not too big for the neighborhood, come down tomorrow. The boys from the old factory are putting together a festival. Music, food, performances. Probably all off-key and off-rhythm. You could show them how it's done. I debated saying no. The thought of all those skeptical faces was suffocating. But something rough and stubborn inside me answered first. I'll be there. The next day, sky scraped clean by late autumn wind. I walked down to the community center where the festival was set up. Booths lined the cracked sidewalk, grilled sausages, rice cakes, folding tables grown